Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to start this Moed Katan daf Gimel. We are going to begin on Gimel Amud Aleph, about 6 lines from the top where it says the word V'lo B'Hasanya. So we were learning in yesterday's daf that upon quoting the beginning of our Mishnah, one is allowed to water a Beis HaShlachim, a field, in which if you would not water it, it would cause a monetary loss. It would cause a hefsid, or it's a davar ha'aved. That is allowed to be done on Chol Moed. It's also allowed to be done on Shemitah. The Gemara asks the question, how is it allowed to be done on Shemitah? Because after all, a person is not allowed to plant, a person is not allowed to harvest or plow on the Shemitah year. So how is this allowed to be done? So we saw 2 answers. One was that we hold like Rabbi. Rabbi is of the opinion that when it comes to Shemitah B'zman Hazeh, nowadays, it is actually not midaraisa, it's a din d'Rabbanan. And therefore, in the case of a hefsid, the Chachamim could be mekel when it comes to the dinim of Shemitah. Alternatively, perhaps really Shemitah B'zman Hazeh is deraisa, like the Shita of the Rabbanan. However, the only time it's aser, as the Gemara says, is dafka when it comes to avos malachos, things that were done in the Mishkan or to construct the Mishkan. However, when it comes to toldos, such as watering a field, that is not considered to be an iser, and therefore it's allowed to be done. The only exceptions, only toldos that are not allowed to be done, are the ones that are explicitly mentioned in the psukim. So Gemara says, "V'lo v'sanya sadchol tizra v'karmachol tizmor." So when the pasuk again is talking about Shemitah, so ainli ela zerua v'zimur. I only know as it says about planting and pruning. Menayin l'nichush le'ider u'le'kisuach. How do we know that a person is not allowed to weed or hoe? Or Rashi says, let's look at Rashi. Idor is shechefer tachas hagafanim l'rifoi ara. The person digs underneath the grapevines in order to be able to help them, which is a form of hoeing. And Rashi says, Kisoach is batsavim, shechayte charoyim min hatoivim, that you remove the bad grass from the good, which again sounds very much like weeding. Rashi says, though, v'lo hainu nichush, it's not exactly the same, dema'aker he'ikarim min hakarka, by you're ripping the grass from its very source. You're just cutting it. So it's like almost like cutting the weeds as opposed to ripping them out completely. Talmud Loimer, so how do we know you're not allowed to do that either? Talmud Loimer, it says, Sadcha lo karmacha, sadcha loi, karmacha lo. Lo kol malacha shebesadcha, lo kol malacha shebekarmacha. So we see beferish, which is going to be our question, that it's not just those toldos, but it's others as well. So menayin she'ein mikarsimin v'ein mizardin v'ein mefaskin be'ilon. How do we know you can't do these things? Let's go to Rashi. Mikarsimin is hainu zimur, is again a form of pruning. El shekirsum shach bi'lanos has more to do with trees. Mizradin, Rashi is mechatech afanim. You're cutting various branches which are dry and moist. Lafi sheish le'ilan anafim yosim edai. If there's too many branches, so you cut them off. Mefaskin, which is saimchin ilan near a tree, to ranun yosim edai. It causes basically problems. So these are again forms of removal of things that are not beneficial to the trees. Talmud Loimer sadcha loy karmacha lo. Lo kol malacha shebe sadcha, v'lo kol malacha shebe karmacha. So we see, again, that we don't allow a lot of things to be done on Shemitah, not just the avos. Menayin she'ein mezavlin, v'ein mefarkin, v'ein me'avkin, v'ein me'ashnin be'ilon. How do we know we don't do these things? So mezavlin is like zevel, which has to do like fertilizing. Mefarkin, Rashi says, avonim shall ikrea ilan. You like put stones on the tree, which like strengthens it. Ma'avkim, Rashi says, shisharshu nirin, that the roots are seen. And you cover them up with earth, with dust. Ma'ashnin ashan tachas ilan, you put smoke under the tree. Kadesh yishru hatoloyim shalov. It's like a way of removing bugs Vein ma'avkin, vein ma'ashtin be'ilan, so that's what we said. So tell me, sadcha lo, karmacha lo. Kol malacha shebesadcha loi, v'chol malacha shebekarmacha lo. So you can't do any of these things. So Yachol, you would also think, lo yikashkesh tachas hezesim. Rashi says, hainu either. You think you can't hoe underneath olive trees, v'lo yador tachas gafanim, or underneath grapevines, v'lo yamale nikoyim mayim, that you can't fill up cracks of water, v'lo yasa ugiyos gafanim, that you cannot make again these fixing up the grapevines. Talmud Omer sadchaluk tizra zariya b'chlal hoisa. So it mentions planting. So v'lama yatsa, why is it excluded? L'hakash le'loimloch. Mazriya miuchedes avoidish b'sadeh. It's a work that's done in a field. V'shebekarim in the vineyard. Avkol shehi avoida shebasada v'shebekarim. It has to also be things that are davka specific things to a field and a vineyard. Look in Rashi. L'ikashkesh tachas hazesim v'li'ador v'im tikshu ha'aser idor le'el. So we're going to say, what do you mean? We just mentioned before, you're not allowed to hoe. Kataretz l'kaman b'ugios ha'b'chadati ha'batiki. So we're going to talk about new versus old. We'll get to that. But again, it seems like a stira in this statement, whether or not you're allowed to hoe or not. Continuing in Rashi, kol hat, fine. So the question is, l'chayra, we see that you're not allowed to do it. Where it says midrabanan. All of these cases are really midrabanan. Across smachta bi alma, says Rashi. Of midaraisa lo havi ela zmiru b'tzira kedamrin el. As we said before, it's only zmir and b'tzira is deraisa. So hani in minechrin eloi. And therefore, again, since they're durabanan, we're going to be meko when it comes to certain din and durabanan when it comes to mishum hefsid. So the Gemara says of kishkish mishvias mishari. So we're saying that a person is allowed to do kishkesh, which again is like the fixing of underneath the vine, olive trees, etc. What do you mean? Voksiv mashvias tishmatena tashta tishmatena molakashkesh tashta molasalik. That you're not allowed to remove stones. You're not allowed to do all these things, right? You're not allowed to hoe. You're not allowed to do any of these things. Kishkush, Rashi again says, is idor. So Omarav Ukva Bar Chama Trei Kishkushi Havi. There's two different types of hoeing. Chad Evrui Yilani. One is to make the tree stronger and healthier. V'chad Satumi Pile. The other one, says Rashi, is Shemi Satem Bekoyim Shel Ilan. You're just covering up the cracks in the trees. So Avrui Ilan Aser. That much you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to do something to make things better, like Harvacha, Harastumi Pili Shari. However, to fix problems, because Rashi says the Ispa Mishum Hepseda. So if it's going to cause a loss, that is allowed. Okay, Idmar. Hachayrish B'Shvius, one who plows on the Shemitah year, Rav Yochanan Rabbi Lezer, Chad Omer Loik V'Chad Omer Ein Loika. So it's a machlokes whether a person is going to actually be chayiv for plowing on Shemitah. So Lema b'Rav Avin Omer Rabbi Eloi Kamifki. Well, their machlokes based on this. The Omer Rabbi Avin Omer Rabbi Eloi Kol Makoim Shenemer Klal Basei. Anytime there is a general rule, more open when it comes to a positive, uprat b'loisa say, and then it specifies a negative. Ain't done nice b'chalal prat. In done noise b'chalal pradu klal, says Rashi. Kegoin hacha. It says in the pasuk of Shana Hashvius Shabbos Niel Aretz. So it should be a day of rest, a year of rest for your land. That's klal, and that's an asay. And then sadchal atizm v'karmachal atizmor. It's specific. It's a prat. It's telling you things you can't do. Hainu los asay. So says Rashi, in danos b'klal pradu klal. V'yafa gav dechsev klal basrei. Even though there's a klal afterwards. Kegoin hacha dechsev basrei Shabbos Shabbosayin. Kalamer ein loy din deshar klal prat. We don't say it's the same din of a klal pradu klal of klal pradu klal yata den al kena prat, that we only are darshan that way. Hoyel, says Rashi, dinishtana mishar klal pradu klal. Since it's different, I'm reading ein b'chal al mashib prat. Hani in midachrina loy. So it's not a flowing klal pradu klal, because first it mentions an asay, then a los asay. So that's not a normal flow. So therefore, it's not a klal prat klal, but rather we say it's in b'chal mashib prat. Only these and nothing else. Only these that are mentioned in the pasuk, nothing else. So therefore, that's how you learn it. So is it a klal prat klal, which would be more inclusive, or it's in b'chal mashib prat, which is only those? So mantam the reason why I get malchus lace later Rav Oven, because they don't hold a Rav Oven, because according to Rav Oven, these things wouldn't apply. So since you don't hold a Rav Oven, you get malchus for all these things, because it's a klal prat, klal. Rabbi Loy, Humandi Amr Eno Loika Isla Rav Oven. If you don't get malchus because you hold a Rav Oven, which holds that's in B'chal Mashim Prat, and therefore you're not going to be getting malchus. Look, the Kuliyama lays on the Rav Oven. Rabbi Loy. No one holds like this svara. So 1 second, if no one holds this svara, so therefore we should say it's a klal protoklal, in which means that everyone should get malchus. So mandim aloika shapra makes sense. Mandim ain't aloika, so amalach say mechti. Zmira b'chlal zuriya. When it comes to zmira being zymer pruning, it's the same idea as what you're trying to do is things to grow. Ubatzir b'chlal katsira, it's a form of harvesting. So ulmai hilchasa. So why is it there? He's coming to say the fact that these are written, it's coming to say specifically these are not those. So you're right. Normally, by klal pradu klal, we should be more inclusive, and we should say it should be like kain a prat. It should be included. Okay, klal pradu klal. We should therefore include all these things. However, the fact that these are mentioned, which seem to be redundant, there's no need to mention them because they should fall into the other categories of planting and the like, of harvesting. The fact that they're mentioned, it must be only these. Again, so where it continues, I only know those things that are in the Torah that are mentioned. How do we know when it comes to weeding and, as we said, hoeing and also weeding, again, ripping the whole weed out or just cutting it? Local malachas v'sadach, local malachas v'karmacha. Menayin shein mikar simin v'ein mizardin v'ein mafaskin b'ilon. So we said all these different types of forms of either of weeding or pruning. Talmud lemer sadcha lo karmacha lo. Kol malachas v'sadcha loy. So menayin shein mizavlin, again, has to do with fertilizer. Vein mifarkin vein ma'ashnin be'ilon, about smoking the trees or again removing certain branches. Talmud lemer sadcha lo karmacha loy karmacha lo. Kol malacha shebesadcha loy v'chol malacha shebekarmacha loy. Yachal lo yikashkesh tachas azesim. You think maybe you're not allowed to hoe underneath these olive branches. Again, the whole purpose that is basically to fill up these holes. It's not to help make it healthier, but it's just to prevent the loss. That's the reason, the whole notion about filling up these holes. What do we mean now? To make literally cakes for grapevines. It means to fill them up, because otherwise they'll be damaged. Talmud lemer sadchalo tizra. Sadchalo tizra zriya b'chlal ha'isa v'lo miyatzal hakash lo loymach mazrim yuchedes avodah shebasada shebekerem avkol she avodah shebekerem shebasada shebekerem. So again, the question is, how can you say it's the rice? The Gemara answers again, but abundant across mach to be alma. As we continue to give them the base. Okay, let's actually, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's see if there's another question here. Question 8. Menolan de toldos lo aser rachmana b'shvius. How do we know that the toldos will not aser on shvius? So he says like this: Dechsiv sadcha otizra v'karmelcha tizmor michti zmira v'chal zriya b'tzira v'chal katzira u'may hilchos akasminu el l'meimar dehani toldos b'chayiv lo yachrini. So again, you can choose your pick where you can find that. Let's find that. Talmud lemer sadcha lo tizra v'zriya b'chlal ha'isa v'lo miyatzel hakash leha loymolach ma zrim yuchedes avodah shebasada One second. Bechlal haisa. Okay. Actually, let me just say what we just saw down here. Fine. Bechlal haisa, right? So, okay. So that was question number 8. Number 8. Okay. Question 9. Mahu l'kashkish tachas hazeisim shvius. So again, it depends. If it's levruye, if it's the elon is to make the tree better, that's not allowed. However, stumi pili to take the holes and to fill up those cracks, that is allowed. Okay. All right, now let's go back there. Gimel with base. Kiyosar Abdimi Omer, he said like this: Yochel Yilke El Toisefes. You would think maybe you should get Malchus on the Toisefes, on the extras, says Rashi. Me'eretz Yisrael a bubble. So when he went there, he said, Shamiti Amri Be'eretz Yisrael Yochel Yilke El Toisefes. V'notziv la Talmuda with Torah. And then he ended up saying that no, you're potter. Okay, but the problem is v'yadana my tosefes v'lo potter. It's very unclear what exactly he meant. V'yadana my talmuda, my tosefes. What exactly is being said over here? So Belezer Omer charisha. He's talking about plowing. B'hachakamer yachol yilka al charisha. You would think you would get malchus for plowing on the shmita dias mechlal prat mechlal pratu klal. Because it's called product klal, and therefore it should be included. Not sevle talmuda liftoira. This says no, you're going to be potter. Dim king kol hani prati lamli. As we said, why does it mention these specifics? It must be kateli dafka. Those are also to be done. Everything else is not going to be chayav malchus. Rav Yochanan Amar Yomim shehosifu chachamim lifnei Rosh Hashanah. Actually, what he was speaking about were the days that we add on before Rosh Hashanah. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Shel Shvius, Shutosefes al Shvius. In addition to not working the fields on the 7th year, there's also Tosefes Shvius, that we also don't work before that as well. Tosefes Rosh Hashanah, you would think that you should also be chayiv for using the field before Rosh Hashanah. The Asya, because we learn out from the pasuk, mebecharish v'katzer tishbos. The Natzif law, we ended up concluding and said that Talmud l'Torah could be in the lemimra. Come on, like we're going to say later on. What is that? Rashi says Gomer Shabbos Shabbosim is Shabbos Bereishis. Okay, so we're going to have to understand this later on. My Yomim Shlifnei Rosh Hashanah. What does it mean? Days before Rosh Hashanah. Kid it not. An Masi Chayshin b'Stei Elon. So until when is a person allowed to continue to plow when it comes to a field which is literally a field with trees? So the answer is Erev Shvius. Let me read this again. Ad Masi Charshim b'Stei Elon Erev Shvius. When is a person allowed to continue to plant such a field, and to plow rather such a field? So Beis Shammai Armim Kolzman Shiyafla Pri, as long as it's still good for the fruits. Says Rashi, Kloimer Kolzman Shecharisha Yafla Peros, as long as the plowing is good for fruits. Shigadlu B'Shishis, that was grown in the 6th year. The Hainu Nami Karv Latzeres near Shvuas of a Makan V'Elachlo. Afterwards, no. Dahavi k'masakin perish shvius. So if you're doing things to fix up and to help for the fruits that are there for the 6th year, that's okay. But once we already get shvuas time, so already at that time, you doing this plowing is going to be beneficial for the future, for the 7th year, which is not allowed. Beisil omrim ad hatzeres. The kroivim divrei elu yos kedivrei elu. Beisham Beis Hillel's shitas are actually quite close in proximity of time. The Admasi Charshin stay halavan, Erev Shvius. So how long do you have to plow a stay lavan? Rashi says a shiltvua of grain. So the answer is Mishetichla halecha. Says Rashi, Shekol hageshamim, that the rain is done, shel shana shishis, of the 6th year. Ade hishait, until that time, ahani charishul izriya, the shanazu. It ends up being beneficial for that 6th year. Ava meshetichla halacha. For however, once it stops, in your halachar, you're not allowed to plow anymore. Demixi kecharish l'tzarch shvius. Now all of a sudden it looks like you're plowing for the 7th year. Dana kol's man shemini adam charshin lita mikshais, that they're plowing to plant for their gourds and cucumbers. V'chol's man shemini adam charshin lita mikshais u'b'dolois. As it says here, beferish, in the Gemara, anytime a person is plowing in order to plant cucumbers and gourds. It sounds like you're giving everyone their own time. As Rashi says, you're coming up with totally different time frames. Some people plow before, and therefore that doesn't seem to be the most logical time, because then you're not really giving a specific time for when to stop plowing. When we're talking about a field of tevuah, of grain, you have Ada Pesach. It was Ilan Ada Tzeres, which again is the sheet which we said before. In parentheses, this is Beis Hill Omer Ada Pesach, even though we said before Beis Hill Omer Ada Tzeres. Okay. Yom Rav Shimon ben Pazi, Yom Rav Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum bar Kapara, Rabbi Gamliel Beis Dino, Nimnu al Shnei Prakim Alol Uvitlum. They got together regarding these 2 times, Pesach and Atzeres, that you have to stop planting already before Rosh Hashanah by Pesach and Atzeres for the stay Elon and the stay and the stay Lavan respectively. Ubitlum, says Rashi, Decharshin on Rosh Hashanah. They said, you know what, it's okay. You don't have to be so strict. You can continue to plow all the way up until Rosh Hashanah, until the Shemitah starts. So Amli Reb Zelu, Reb Avavi, Yermel Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Gamliel Beis Dinu, Heicha Matzul Mavatli, Tekanta, to Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. How did they have a right to come later on and to be able to uproot the Tekana of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel that said you have specific times before Rosh Hashanah? You don't have all the way until Rosh Hashanah to plow. How do they have a right to do that? Heichi Matzul Mavatli, Tekanta Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, V'hatanan, Ein Beis in Yochel Mavatli Divrei Beis Din Chaveroi Elim King Godam Chachva Minyan. So they have no right to have done so. So how could Rabbi Gamliel say, you know what, it's not necessary, you don't have to stop plowing, and you can keep going until Rosh Hashanah? What do you mean? So Eshtaimim Kishachad, they thought about it for a minute. Amrulei Eimer Kach, so Amrulei Eimer Kach Hisnu Beinehem Kol Haretz Levatel Yavav Yavatel. Actually, what happened, Shammai and Hillel, when they made the Takana, they already made the stipulation that anyone who wants to come later on and remove it can do so. And therefore, because they're the ones that made that initial stipulation, then it's okay. And therefore, Rabbi Gamliel was allowed to come later on and say that you have all the way until Rosh Hashanah. V'yavatel did who? So he halach Moshe Sinai. What do you mean? How are they able to do this? It's actually halach Moshe Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rem Nechon Yish Bikat Beis Chartan Esunetios. When it comes to Esunetios, let's finish this. A Rav of Nisachamayim halach Moshe Sinai. So when it comes to, let's go out of order. Nisachamayim, the water libations on Sukkot, the Arava. Question exactly what that is. The Gemara Sukkot talks about it. The arava that's put on the mizbeach, or taking the arava around the mizbeach, and the esunetios, the din of the 10 trees. So now let's go into Rashi. What are these 10 trees? Hamafuzaros b'soch beisah. So you have a measurement of a beisah field, and you have 10 trees that are spread out. How much is the beisah? Rashi says 50 by 50. So charshin kol hashana, you can plow the whole field. Mishvil and erev shvius ad Rosh Hashanah. You can plow those 10 tree fields all the way up until Rosh Hashanah. Amri, we say Hani Hoyel Violadois Hain Ikapsedi Yisera, because they're so far apart and they're needed because they're young sapling trees. So we're allowed to plant them, because otherwise you're allowed to plow, because otherwise you're going to cause a tremendous loss on those trees. The only thing that's allowed as Halachah Sinai is Dafkas and Netios. but anything else is not allowed to be done before all the way up until Rosh Hashanah. So again, what right do they have to do so? So Rabbi Yitzchak, Kigamir Hilchasa, when did we say that there was a halacha Moshe Sinai, that you're not allowed to plant an older tree all the way until Rosh Hashanah? That's Shloshim Yom Lifnei Rosh Hashanah. That din is, you're not allowed to plant, you're not allowed to deal with it within 30 days. The also Hani, and then Beisham Beisil came, and Tikkun Me Pesach Matzeres, and they came, and they said, even further than that, Pesach or Suk or Shavuos, depending on what type of field it is. The Asnu Bedidhu, and again, Beisham Beisil made the condition, Kol Ritz Levatel Yavav Yavatel. The Hani Hilchas Ninhu, so period. So therefore, says Rashi, the Chosh Zakenu Ad Rosh Hashanah, the Asu, but the Kana Didhu, the Hirchiku Ad Pesach Matzeres. B'chol haraitza levati yavebatel, says Rashi, Rabbi Gamliel, the bittul lo bittul el pesach matzeres ad shloshim yom lifnei Rosh Hashanah. So it doesn't mean that really he said you could go all the way until Rosh Hashanah. He says you can go until the 30 days, which was the original takana, was original halakha Moshe Sinai. Beisham Beisil just were more strict and went by Pesach into Shavuos, but the truth is, all they did was remove that and go back to its original halakha Moshe Sinai source. Fine. So Gemara says, 1 second. Is that really true, everything what we're saying? V'hani hilchos ninhu. Are these actually halachas Moshe Sinai? Kroninhu. We actually have psukim to support this. It says, B'charish v'katzer tishbois. Rabbi Kiva oimer ein sarach loimer charish v'katzer shel shvius. It doesn't need to tell us they're not allowed to do these things on Shemitah. Shark for Nemar. We already have psukim that tell you not allowed to do these things on Shemitah. Sadchot tizmor chamachot tizmor. So why do you have another pasuk tells you you're not allowed to work on Shemitah? It must be it's not talking about Shemitah. It's coming to talk about Tosefes. Elo charishal erev Shvius. It's talking about plowing even before Shvius. As we continue down the mouth, shenichnas l'Shvius. Because of Shvius, shiyotzel moite Shvius. So the pasuk is telling you can't even do that. So we have a pasuk already of telling you there's a din deraisa of Tosefes Shemitah. It's not that it's a din halacha Moshe Sinai, and therefore they removed it, then they went back. It's the psukim. That's going to be the question. Rabbi Shmuel Eimer mecharish rishos av katzir rishos. It's coming to tell you, in general, the only thing that's not allowed to be done is if you're plowing and planting for your own benefit. Yatsa katzir ha'omer shi mitzvah. However, when it comes to harvesting the katzir omer, which is a mitzvah, says Rashi, alpha bi shematza katzir kaitzid in katzir lishma. That if you would find the grains and they're already cut regarding the Omer offering on Pesach, it's not acceptable. You actually have to cut them yourself. So therefore, that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you, that we allow you to do these things for Shabbos for the sake of a mitzvah. But again, the question is, according to this other shita, it's the pasuk is telling you it's not halacha Moshe Sinai of Tosefes Shvius, it's an actual pasuk. El Omer Rav Nachman Yitzchak Ki Gemiri Hilchasa. So what is the halacha Moshe Sinai about at all? It's only Lemishri Yalda. Again, it's to allow you to plow up until Rosh Hashanah these esenetios, these young trees. Kroi, the psukim, is Lemeser Zakena, is coming to aser the plowing of trees, and there's a din of Tosefes. Now, v'kivan de hilchasa lemishri yalda. The fact that we have a halakha mishri that allows you to plow for these young trees, la mamel zakena sira, isn't that obvious that the zakena is aser? What are you telling me that the pasuk is the zakenim, then the halakha mishri Sinai is for the yalda? What do you mean? If you already have a halakha mishri Sinai, that only the sapling young trees of Eser Netios is allowed, so obviously you can make a diak that anything else is not allowed. So what do you mean a pasuk? El hilchasa Rabbi Shmuel kroi Rabbi Akiva. The halacha is like Rabbi Shmuel, and the pasuk is actually like the shita of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva again is the one over here that says it's coming to teach us, the pasuk is coming to tell you Tosefes, and the halacha is like the shita of is Rabbi Shmuel, says Rashi, do nafik le mikroi, the darish lekra l'drash achrina l'haitzi katzir ha'omer. So he uses it to teach us again to exclude the katzir ha'omer, and the pasuk and therefore the halacha is Rabbi Shmuel, and the pasuk is Rabbi Kiva. If you have Yochanan Omer, we're going to get to the two dots. If you have Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Gamliel, ubeistinu midaraisa batalhu, that when it came to this, they were mavatalit. Midaraisa bittul, says Rashi Kloimer, ashkachu smach ben Torah. They found a source in the Torah, that's why they were able to mavatal it. So my taima. So what is the reason? How do they find a source in the Torah? Because again, they shouldn't have been allowed to be mavatal it because Beis Shammai Hillel instituted it. Unless you have a pasuk to support yourself. So my time, a gomer Shabbos mishabbos Bereishis. Malu holan hiasuru afanel achareha mutarin. We know when it comes to Shabbos Bereishis, Shabbos you're not allowed to do malacha, but before and afterwards it's allowed. Afkan hiasureha asura afanel achareha mutarin. So too, it's only Shemitah itself is asur, but before and afterwards it is allowed. Fine. Maskiful Rav Ashi, Mandi Arme Hilchasa, the one who says Allah Mashminai, Asa Gezer Shava, Akra Hilchasa. So the Gezer Shava is going to come and remove the halacha Mashminai. Mandi Arme Kra Asi Gezer Shava, Akra Kra. So El Omer Rav Ashi, Rabbi Gamliel Beistino, Savri Lok Rabbi Gamliel. They actually felt it was halacha mashsina. The only time was a halacha mashsina is manch beis hamikdash kayim. Diwan nisachamayim. The only time is davka in the time of the beis hamikdash. But b'zman shein beis hamikdash kayim lo. When the time the beis hamikdash wasn't kayim, then not. Says Rashi v'chi shara Rabbi Gamliel beis dino b'zman shein beis hamikdash kayim. So the rabbanim were makel because they felt that it was. This whole pasuk of the din of Shemitah of Tosefes is dafka the zman shebeis hamikdash kayim. The zman she'ein beis hamikdash kayim, the din is not that. So look at this. We're going to stop there. Look at this Taisus. The sarach lasas Tosefes gabi Shabbos bein bechanisa bein b'yitziyasa lohoisifa michal kodesh. There is this notion of adding time onto Shabbos. Equal meimer haporto loy kachashiv. That's not significant. Even though it's only a small amount of time. That definitely needs to be added because the question is, it sounds like, we went out from Shabbos Bereishis that there's no din Tosefes. What do you mean? We do have Tosefes Shabbos. We don't keep Shabbos for exactly 24 hours. So again, it's such a small amount of time. It's insignificant compared to these longer times of Shemitah, and therefore it's not considered to be mentioned. Okay, let's look at a couple more questions. Maybe question 10. How could Rabbi Gamliel have come and removed it? So he says like this: Gemiri the hilchasa enu el bezman shmeis mitashkaim. This is what we're saying. The halacha Moshe Sinai of again, only the new trees you can plow up until Rosh Hashanah, but the old ones not. There's a din Tosefes, that's only the time of the Beis HaMikdash. It's comparable to the din of Nisachamayim, which of course is something which was done in the Beis HaMikdash. As we said, they instituted, when they made their takana, that anyone who wants to remove it can remove it, and therefore that's why everyone was allowed to. Question TA23. Madu asel hashkos memei geshamim Moed. I don't think we did this. Okay, we did not do that. TB 23. Kishkush bezeisim imuter b'shvias. Okay, so that's the same question as we had over here, which is question 9. So again, it depends if it's for the sake of strengthening the tree. That's not allowed. But if it's a way to help the tree, because otherwise it's going to cause a monetary loss, that is not allowed. Okay, Adkan.